Arizona Territory, 1878. The desert wind moved across the empty land like a whisper from another time. Miles away from the crowded towns and wealthy ranches, where men measured each other by gold, land, and family names, one man walked alone through the endless wilderness. His name was Kai. To the people living near the frontier settlements, Kai was only an Apache tracker. A man they hired when they needed someone to find a lost trail. A man they called when they needed someone brave enough to enter dangerous places. But a man they never invited to sit beside them. They respected his skills. But they did not respect him. They saw his worn clothes. They saw the scars on his hands. They saw that he had no large ranch, no money, no powerful family behind him. And they decided his value before they ever knew his heart. To them, Kai was a man who had nothing. No wealth. No position. No future that mattered. He had spent years hearing the same message in different words. You are not enough. Not enough to stand beside wealthy men. Not enough to be accepted in their world. Not enough to be loved by someone from a respected family. But Kai never allowed those words to destroy him. Because deep inside, he knew something those men did not understand. A person's worth was not carried in a pocket full of coins. It was carried in the choices they made when nobody was watching. And Kai had made many choices in silence. He helped travelers who were lost. He protected people who could never repay him. He gave food when his own supplies were low. He saved lives without asking anyone to remember his name. But kindness did not make him rich. And in the harsh world of the frontier, kindness alone was rarely enough. That was the world Kai lived in. Until the day he received an unusual offer. A wealthy ranch owner named Thomas Whitmore sent for him. Thomas was known throughout the territory. He owned thousands of acres. His name carried power. His word could open doors. Or close them forever. When Kai arrived at the ranch, he immediately felt the difference between his world and theirs. The buildings were large. The horses were expensive. The people wore clean clothes and looked at him with suspicion. Thomas did not welcome him warmly. He did not offer friendship. He offered a job. A dangerous one. My daughter has become a problem, Thomas said. Kai stayed silent. He listened. Thomas explained that his daughter, Eliza Whitmore, refused to marry the man he had chosen for her. A wealthy businessman who could protect the family name. A marriage that would bring money back to the struggling ranch. But Eliza refused. She wanted a life where she could make her own choices. And Thomas saw that as rebellion. She needs to disappear for a while, Thomas said. Kai looked at him carefully. What do you mean? Thomas placed money on the table. Take her away from here. Make people believe she left willingly. Kai understood. He was not being hired as a protector. He was being hired to remove someone's freedom. For the first time, Kai questioned the mission. But he also knew the reality. He needed the money. Winter was coming. His people needed supplies. And men like Thomas Whitmore did not ask twice. So Kai accepted. But he did not know that the woman he was supposed to make disappear would change everything. When Kai finally found Eliza, she was not what he expected. He expected a spoiled rich woman who cared only about herself. Instead, he found a woman standing alone in the wilderness, frightened but refusing to break. Her dress was dirty. Her eyes were tired. But there was still strength in her. She looked at him and immediately understood. You were sent by my father. Kai said nothing. Her voice became softer. Are you here to take me away? The old Kai would have simply followed orders. The old Kai would have completed the job and walked away. But something about her made him hesitate. Because for the first time, he saw the truth. She was not a problem. She was a person. A person trapped by someone more powerful. And Kai knew what it felt like to have people decide your life without asking what you wanted. He knew what it felt like to be judged. To be ignored. To be treated like you were not enough. Slowly, he stepped closer. But instead of forcing her forward, he reached for the rope around her hands. And cut it. Eliza looked at him in shock. Why? Kai looked away. Because he did not have an answer. He was risking everything. His payment. His safety. His reputation. Maybe even his life. But something inside him told him that walking away would be worse. Because sometimes the hardest battles are not fought with weapons. They are fought when a person chooses between what is easy and what is right. Kai had been hired to make Eliza disappear. But he was about to do something no one expected. He was about to protect her. He knew the world would turn against him. He knew powerful men would come after him. He knew there was no guarantee of a happy ending. But as he looked at the woman who had lost her freedom, he felt something he had not felt in years. A reason to fight. A reason to stay. A reason to believe that maybe even a man who had always been told he was not enough could still become enough for someone. He knew he shouldn't, but he couldn't stop. The first night after Kai cut the rope from Eliza's hands was the quietest night either of them had ever experienced. Not because the desert was peaceful, but because both of them were trying to understand what had happened. Kai had broken the agreement. He had been paid to take her away. But instead, he had given her freedom. And Eliza did not know what to think about the man sitting across the small fire. The same man everyone in town feared. Was the same man who had saved her. For the first few days, they barely spoke. Kai walked ahead, watching the trail. Eliza followed behind, still unsure if she could trust him. She knew he was different from the men who worked for her father. He did not brag. He did not demand respect. He did not treat her like property. But she also knew something else. He was dangerous to her future. If her father found out Kai helped her escape, he would never forgive him. And if the town discovered she was traveling alone with an Apache warrior, people would create their own story. A story that could destroy both of them. Still, every day, small moments changed the way they saw each other. One afternoon, while crossing a rocky path, Eliza's horse became frightened. The animal stepped backward near the edge of a cliff. Before she could react, Kai moved quickly. He grabbed the horse's rope and calmed it. He did not shout. He did not panic. He simply spoke softly until the animal trusted him. Eliza watched him carefully. You understand animals better than people. Kai looked at her. Animals do not lie. For some reason, that answer stayed with her. Because she realized Kai was not a cold man. He was a man who had learned to survive in a world that had never been kind to him. That evening, Eliza noticed something. Kai had given her the larger portion of food. She looked at his plate. You ate less. I am not hungry. She looked at him. You always say that. Kai looked away. And she understood. He was lying. Not to deceive her. But to protect her. A man who had almost nothing was still giving. Days turned into weeks. The desert journey became less about survival. And more about learning who the other person truly was. Eliza discovered that Kai was patient. He never wasted words. He listened more than he spoke. When they passed an injured bird, he stopped to help it. When they found an abandoned cabin, he repaired it before leaving so another traveler could use it. Eliza noticed everything. Because she had spent her whole life surrounded by wealthy people who talked about kindness. But Kai was the first person she met who actually lived it. And Kai began seeing something in Eliza too. At first, he thought she was just another rich woman who never knew hardship. But he was wrong. One morning, he found her collecting herbs. "What are you doing?" She looked up. "Helping." Kai raised an eyebrow. "With what?" "The plants. The animals. Anyone who needs it." Kai smiled slightly. "You do not act like your father." The smile disappeared from her face. "My father believes money can fix everything." "And you?" Eliza looked across the mountains. "I think some things can only be fixed by people who care." Those words reached Kai. Because they were the same words he had lived by. But he had never heard someone from her world say them. Slowly, something began growing between them. Not a sudden love. Not a fairy tale. Something quieter. Something built from trust. A look. A conversation. A moment of understanding. But both of them were afraid. Kai knew the truth. Eliza belonged to a world that would never easily accept him. She was the daughter of a wealthy ranch owner. He was a man who owned nothing. No land. No money. No title. Only his honor. And Eliza knew the danger too. If she chose Kai, she would lose the comfortable life she was born into. She would lose her father's approval. She would lose the respect of many people. But every day beside Kai showed her something. Respect from the world meant nothing if she had to lose herself. One evening, while they sat beside the fire, Eliza finally asked the question that had been sitting between them. "Kai, when this is over, what will you do?" He looked at the flames. "I return to my life." "And what is your life?" Kai was silent. Then he answered. "Surviving." Eliza looked at him with sadness. "You deserve more than that." Kai looked at her. For a moment, neither spoke. Because those words meant more than she realized. No one had ever told him he deserved more. Most people only reminded him what he lacked. But Eliza saw something different. She saw a man. Not a poor Apache. Not someone who was not enough. A man who had strength. A man who cared. A man who had a heart bigger than the world gave him credit for. And that scared Kai more than any enemy. Because fighting enemies was easy. But caring about someone. That was a battle he could lose. Every step they took brought them closer. Closer to trust. Closer to truth. Closer to a choice neither of them could avoid. Because something was growing. Something real. Something dangerous. And if the world found out, both of them could lose everything. Something is growing, but it's risky. The journey back to the Whitmore Ranch felt different. When Kai and Eliza first entered the wilderness, they were strangers. She was a wealthy ranch owner's daughter. He was the man hired to remove her from her father's life. But now, after weeks of walking through storms, sharing quiet moments beside fires, and surviving dangers together, they were no longer strangers. They had become two people who understood each other in a way neither expected. But Kai carried a heavy truth inside him. This could not continue forever. Sooner or later, they would return. Sooner or later, Eliza's world would come back. And that world would remind both of them of the same thing. They were not supposed to belong together. The night before they reached the ranch, Kai sat alone outside their camp. The fire was almost gone. The stars filled the sky. But his mind was louder than ever. For years, Kai had survived by keeping his heart guarded. He had learned not to want things he could never have. Not money. Not acceptance. Not a place among wealthy people. But Eliza had changed something inside him. She made him imagine a future. A future where he was not just surviving. A future where someone chose him. But he was afraid. Because hope was dangerous. Hope could be taken away. The next morning, Eliza noticed his silence. "Kai, something is wrong." He looked at her. "There is something you need to know." She waited. "I was not sent to protect you." The words hurt. Even though she already knew. "I was hired to take you away." A long silence followed. Then Eliza quietly said. "But you didn't." Kai looked down. "No." "Why?" Kai had faced storms. Wild animals. Dangerous men. But this question was harder than all of them. Because the answer meant giving away the last piece of himself. Finally, he spoke. "Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being a job." Eliza looked at him. "You became someone I cared about." For the first time, Kai admitted the truth. "I do not have your father's money. I do not have land. I cannot give you the life you were born into." He paused. "But I can promise you this. I will never treat you like something I own. I will stand beside you. I will protect you." Eliza's eyes filled with emotion. Because those words were worth more than any expensive gift. She stepped closer. "Kai." But before she could answer, the sound of horses interrupted them. Riders. Coming fast. The Whitmore ranch workers had found them. And behind them was Thomas Whitmore. Her father. The moment Thomas saw them standing together, his face changed. He looked at Kai. Then at his daughter. And he understood. The plan had failed. The man he hired to make her disappear had done the opposite. He had given her a choice. Thomas stepped down from his horse. "You." Kai stood still. "You were paid for one thing." Kai nodded. "Yes." "And you failed." "Yes." Eliza stepped forward. "Father, you do not understand." Thomas raised his hand. "No." His voice was cold. "You are my daughter. I know exactly what I see." He looked at Kai. A man with nothing. Those words hit harder because Kai had heard them his entire life. Nothing. Poor. Not enough. Thomas continued. "You think kindness is enough?" Kai remained silent. "You think because you helped her through the wilderness, you deserve her?" Eliza became angry. "He deserves more respect than most men I know." But Thomas was not convinced. He turned toward Kai. "If you truly believe you are worthy." The ranch owner pointed toward the mountains. "Then prove it." Everyone became silent. Kai understood immediately. This was not about fighting. It was not about money. It was a test of character. Thomas continued. "You will leave tomorrow. You will survive one winter in the northern mountains. No money. No supplies from my ranch. No help." Kai looked at him. "And if I return?" Thomas looked away. "We will see." That was all. No promise. No acceptance. No guarantee. Just uncertainty. Eliza looked at Kai with fear. She knew what those mountains meant. Freezing nights. Starvation. Possible death. She whispered. "You do not have to do this." Kai looked at her. And for the first time, she saw something different in his eyes. Not anger. Not pride. Purpose. I do. Why? Kai answered softly. Because I need to know who I am. The next morning, Kai rode toward the mountains alone. No crowd followed him. No one celebrated him. No one believed he would return. He had no wealth to prove. No title to defend. Only his courage. And for the first time in his life, he was not fighting to show the world he was enough. He was fighting because he already knew he was. The mountain waited. The winter waited. And the hardest chapter of his life was about to begin. No promise. No guarantee. Just the test. The mountains did not care who Kai was. They did not care that he was brave. They did not care that he had protected Eliza. They did not care that he had earned the respect of people who once looked down on him. The mountains only asked one question. Can you survive? The first week was the hardest. The cold arrived like an enemy. Snow covered the trails. The rivers froze. The wind cut through every layer of clothing Kai owned. He had no warm cabin. No workers helping him. No family waiting nearby. No promise that anyone would even notice if he failed. Thomas Whitmore had given him the hardest test possible. A test where nobody could help. A test where only character mattered. Kai built a small shelter with his own hands. He hunted. He gathered wood. He learned the rhythm of the mountain. Every day was a battle. But he did not complain. He remembered something his elders taught him long ago. A strong man does not prove himself by speaking loudly. He proves himself by what he does when nobody is watching. So Kai worked. Hard work in silence. Day after day. Night after night. And as the winter grew worse, something inside him changed. At first, Kai believed he was fighting to earn Eliza. To prove to her father that a poor Apache man could stand beside a wealthy family. But slowly, he realized something. This was not about Thomas. It was not about the ranch. It was not even about Eliza. It was about becoming the man he always knew he could be. One evening, while searching for firewood, Kai heard something. A weak voice. Someone calling for help. He followed the sound through the snow. Behind a group of trees, he found a young boy lying on the ground. The boy was around 13 years old. His clothes were torn. His hands were shaking from the cold. When Kai approached, the boy became afraid. Stay away. Kai stopped. I am not here to hurt you. The boy looked at him. People say men like you are dangerous. Kai felt those words. Because he had heard them before. Not exactly the same. But close enough. The boy's name was Samuel. He had worked at a ranch nearby. He ran away after being blamed for losing supplies. He believed nobody wanted him. Nobody needed him. I am useless, Samuel whispered. Kai looked at the boy. And for a moment, he saw himself. A young person being judged before being understood. You are not useless, Kai said. Samuel looked confused. Everyone says I am. Kai sat beside him. People say many things when they do not know the truth. Those words changed something. Kai decided to help him. Even though it made survival harder. Even though food was limited. Even though winter was dangerous. Some people might have walked away. But Kai remembered what kind of man he wanted to be. A man who protected. A man who cared. So he stayed. The next days became even harder. Now Kai was not only surviving for himself. He was responsible for another life. He taught Samuel everything he knew. How to find safe paths. How to track animals. How to build a stronger shelter. How to remain calm when fear took control. At first, Samuel struggled. But Kai was patient. "You are learning," Kai told him. "I am too slow." "No." Kai looked at him. "You are becoming stronger." Slowly, the boy changed. The frightened child who believed he was worthless began believing in himself. And Kai changed too. Because leadership was not about being the strongest person in the room. It was about lifting someone else when they were weak. Then came the worst storm of the winter. The sky disappeared. The snow came down for days. Their food supply became dangerously low. The fire almost went out. Samuel became sick. Kai knew the truth. If he left Samuel behind, he might survive. If he stayed, they both might die. For a moment, the old survival instinct inside him spoke. "Save yourself. Nobody will blame you. Nobody will know." But then he looked at Samuel. A young boy who finally believed someone cared. Kai made his choice. He stayed. He gave Samuel the last of the food. He walked through the storm searching for medicine. He carried wood back when his own body begged him to rest. He sacrificed without expecting anything in return. No reward. No recognition. No guarantee. Only doing what was right. Weeks passed. The storm finally ended. Spring slowly returned. The snow began to disappear. And when Kai looked at himself, he barely recognized the man standing there. The man who entered the mountains wanted acceptance. The man leaving them carried something greater. Respect. Not from others. From himself. He had proven himself. Not through wealth. Not through power. Through action. When Kai and Samuel finally reached the edge of the mountains, they saw the Whitmore Ranch in the distance. Kai stopped. He looked at the place where his journey began. The place where people thought he was not enough. But now he returned different. Not because he had gained riches. He had gained something far more valuable. He had learned patience. Sacrifice. Leadership. Compassion. He had learned that a person's true worth was revealed when there was nothing to gain. Kai had entered the mountains as a man trying to prove his value. He returned as a man who already knew it. And waiting for him was the hardest judgment of all. Not the mountains. Not the cold. But the eyes of the man who once believed he was nothing. Thomas Whitmore. Would he finally see the truth? Would he accept the man his daughter loved? Or would Kai still be judged by what he owned instead of who he was? The answer was waiting at the ranch. And Kai was ready. Because he had survived the test. But now came the moment of judgment. The morning sun rose over the Whitmore Ranch as a figure appeared in the distance. At first, no one recognized him. The ranch workers stopped what they were doing. The horses became restless. Everyone watched the stranger riding slowly toward them. Then someone whispered. "It's him." Kai had returned. But he was not the same man who left months before. When he rode away, people saw a poor Apache tracker. A man without money. A man without a family name. A man Thomas Whitmore believed was not enough. But the man returning was different. His clothes were worn. His face showed the marks of a difficult winter. His hands carried the evidence of months of struggle. He had no bags of gold. No valuable items. No proof of wealth. Nothing that could impress a rich man. But he carried something far more important. A quiet confidence. A strength that did not need to be announced. Behind him rode Samuel. The young boy who had entered the mountains broken and afraid. But now he sat tall. He was no longer the boy who believed he was useless. He had learned courage. He had learned responsibility. And everyone could see one thing clearly. Kai had changed his life. As Kai stepped onto the ranch, Thomas Whitmore came outside. The entire ranch became silent. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Thomas looked at Kai from head to toe. He looked at the worn clothes. The tired eyes. The empty hands. Then he asked the question everyone expected. Where is the reward? Kai looked at him calmly. I have none. Thomas raised an eyebrow. You spent months in the mountains and returned with nothing? Kai nodded. Yes. The ranch workers exchanged looks. Some expected Thomas to laugh. Some expected him to reject Kai. After all, the old Thomas only cared about results. About money. About appearances. But this time, something was different. Thomas looked at Samuel. The boy stepped forward. Mr. Whitmore. Thomas looked surprised. I would not be alive without him. Samuel's voice was steady. He saved me. He taught me. He stayed when he could have left. The ranch became quiet. Because everyone understood what those words meant. Kai did not return with riches. He returned with proof. Proof that he was the kind of man who protected others. The kind of man who sacrificed. The kind of man who could be trusted. Thomas looked back at Kai. For years, Thomas believed strength came from wealth. From land. From power. But standing in front of him was a man who had nothing. And still gave everything. Finally, Thomas spoke. You knew you might not survive. Kai nodded. Yes. You knew there was no guarantee I would accept you. Yes. Then why did you go? Kai looked toward the mountains. The same mountains that had tested him. Because some things are worth doing even when nobody promises you anything. Thomas became silent. Those words stayed with him. Because they were the words of a man who understood responsibility. A man who did not need a reward to do what was right. For the first time, Thomas saw Kai differently. Not as an Apache tracker. Not as a poor outsider. Not as someone beneath him. He saw him as a man. A man who had earned respect. But Thomas was still a proud man. He did not suddenly apologize. He did not give a dramatic speech. He simply turned toward the ranch house. Dinner is at sunset. Everyone looked surprised. Kai said nothing. But he understood. For a man like Thomas Whitmore. That was acceptance. Not loud. Not emotional. But real. Later that evening, Kai sat at the Whitmore table. The same table where he once would never have been invited. Eliza sat beside him. And for the first time, nobody looked at him like he did not belong. Because respect had not been handed to him. It had been earned. Through sacrifice. Through patience. Through actions when nobody was watching. Eliza looked at him and smiled. She knew the truth. Kai did not win because he became wealthy. He did not win because he impressed her father. He won because he remained himself through the hardest moments. The man who entered the mountains searching for acceptance returned with something greater. A purpose. A family. And a place where he belonged. Because sometimes the greatest victories are quiet. Sometimes they happen without applause. Sometimes the person who has nothing proves they have everything that matters. And Kai had finally shown the world what Eliza saw from the beginning. He was never a man who was not enough. He was a man who had been waiting for the chance to prove it. And he had, the winter that was meant to break Kai became the season that built him. Months had passed since the day he returned from the mountains. The same people who once looked away when he walked through town now greeted him with respect. Not because he became rich. Not because he gained land. Not because he changed who he was. But because they finally understood something. A man's value is not measured by what he owns. It is measured by what he is willing to do when there is nothing to gain. And nobody understood that better than Eliza. She remembered the first day she met Kai. She remembered the fear in the desert. She remembered believing he was only the man her father sent to take her away. But then she saw the truth. The man hired to make her disappear was the only man who gave her a choice. Kai had every reason to walk away. He had no guarantee. No promise that Thomas would accept him. No certainty that Eliza would choose him. He could have protected himself. He could have returned to the mountains alone. But he said yes to the hardest path. And that choice changed everything. A year after his return, the Whitmore ranch looked different. Not because the land changed. Because the people changed. Thomas was no longer the same man either. He still carried pride. He still spoke few words. But he had learned something from Kai. Respect could not be bought. It had to be earned. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Thomas walked outside and found Kai repairing a fence. The same kind of work that many wealthy men would never touch. Thomas watched quietly. "You still work like you have something to prove." Kai looked up. "Maybe I do." Thomas studied him. "After everything you went through, you still think you need to prove yourself?" Kai smiled slightly. "No." "Then why?" Kai looked across the ranch. "At one time, I worked to show people I was enough." He paused. "Now I work because this life matters." Thomas said nothing. But for the first time, he understood. Kai was not chasing approval anymore. He had already found his worth. Not in money. Not in another person's opinion. But inside himself. And that was the moment Thomas truly accepted him. Not with a speech. Not with a grand gesture. But with trust. Because trust is sometimes the strongest form of respect. Soon after, Kai and Eliza married. Their wedding was nothing like the wealthy celebrations people expected. There were no endless decorations. No powerful guests trying to impress each other. No display of money. It was simple. Beautiful. Real. The ceremony took place near the mountains. The same mountains that tested Kai. The same place where he nearly lost everything. But now, it was where he gained everything. Eliza stood beside him. Not as a woman he rescued. But as the woman who chose him. She looked at Kai and smiled. "You know, my father once hired you to make me disappear." Kai smiled. "And now?" Eliza looked around at their home. "Our lives are proof that he was wrong." Years passed. The couple built a peaceful life together. They raised children who learned that kindness was stronger than pride. They taught them that courage was not about being fearless. Courage was choosing what was right even when the outcome was uncertain. And whenever someone asked Kai how he earned the respect of a man like Thomas Whitmore, he always gave the same answer. "I didn't earn it by becoming someone else. I earned it by refusing to stop being myself." Because the greatest lesson from Kai's journey was simple. Money can open doors. Power can create fear. A name can create attention. But only character creates lasting respect. The world told Kai he was not enough. But he never needed wealth to prove them wrong. He proved it through action. Through sacrifice. Through hard work in silence. Through helping someone weaker when nobody was watching. The most important moment of his life was not the day he married Eliza. It was not the day Thomas accepted him. It was the day he stood at the edge of those mountains. With no promise. No guarantee. No reward waiting. And still said. Yes. Yes to the challenge. Yes to the struggle. Yes to becoming better. Because sometimes life's greatest rewards come after the hardest battles. And sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the person everyone remembers. If this story touched your heart, leave a like, share it with someone who loves powerful journeys, and comment where you watched from. Because every great story begins with one choice. The choice to keep going when nobody believes in you.